The moment that shattered the last pieces of denial came on a Tuesday morning, when someone pounded on the front door so loudly that Lily burst into tears upstairs. I carried her down the stairs, opened the door just a crack, and felt my whole body stiffen. Thomas stood there, not angry, not panicked, but with the cold resolve of someone who had convinced himself that the monstrous thing he was about to do was reasonable. He pushed inside like he still lived here, his eyes immediately zeroing in on the small overnight bag I'd left near the sofa. "Where are you taking the kids?" His voice was low, trembling with a dangerous kind of certainty. Before I could answer, Noah ran out yelling, "Daddy!" Thomas crouched, scooping him up with an ease that made my stomach twist. "Come on, mate. Daddy has a surprise for you today." He didn't ask me, didn't look at me. He was acting like decisions no longer required me at all. I blocked the doorway. "Thomas, this isn't your visitation day. You need to leave." He gave me a smile so thin it barely counted as one. "Evelyn, don't make this harder," those words. The same ones I heard in the recording, in the emails, in the planning. I felt my blood run cold. "I know about New Zealand," I said quietly. "The visa, the school, the money." Mara, Thomas froze. Only his eyelids flickered, panic breaking through before he forced it down with anger. "You went through my private accounts? My emails?" He snapped. "That's illegal, Evelyn. The court will be very interested, and they'll be even more interested." I shot back. "In the part where you tried to take my children out of the country without me." His face twisted. Then he moved. He grabbed Noah tighter and strode toward the door. "Put him down." I shouted, "I'm his father." He barked, "And I'm his mother." I stepped in front of the door, my heart slamming against my ribs. "If you take one more step, I'm calling the police." For a terrifying moment, I thought he might push past me. His jaw clenched, nostrils flaring, eyes burning with something unhinged. Then, footsteps on the back patio. The kitchen door opened up. My mom walked in. She took one look at the scene, Lily crying in my arms, Thomas gripping Noah, and her entire expression sharpened like steel. "Thomas," she said, voice icy and steady, "put my grandson down, now." Her tone cut through him like a blade. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he set Noah on the floor. I reached for my phone. "Leave this house. This is your last warning." For a heartbeat, he looked like he wanted to scream, to break something, to force his way through. But then he turned and slammed the door behind him. Hours later, after I had finally calmed the children, my phone buzzed from Thomas. "You can't stop this. I'll do whatever it takes. If you don't cooperate, I'll use other methods. You won't win." "Evelyn," I stared at the glowing screen in the darkness of the nursery, and understood. Thomas was no longer the man I married. He was someone I had to defeat. I used to think the confrontation was the worst part, Thomas trying to walk out with Noah in his arms, while I blocked the doorway with nothing but trembling hands and sheer will. But the truth is, that wasn't the peak. That was just the opening shot. The true battle unfolded in the days that followed, when Thomas abandoned subtlety and went straight for legal warfare. 3 days later, a thick envelope from his solicitor arrived at my parents' house, accusing me of being emotionally unstable, withholding the children, and requesting emergency access for him. I placed the letter on the kitchen table with shaking hands. My dad looked at it like it was a declaration of war. "Enough," he muttered. "It's time the court sees who he really is." My solicitor, a sharp, deceptively calm woman whose presence could slice through steel, reviewed every piece of evidence I had collected. The recordings, the emails, the transfers, the nursery's warning, all of it. She closed the folder, removed her glasses, and said, "You've done everything right. We're not defending now. We're going on the offensive." The hearing felt surreal. Thomas walked into the courtroom polished, tidy, trying to look like a stable father wronged by an overreactive wife. But his eyes, God, his eyes, they were frantic, darting around like he was trying to find an escape route. Mara sat in the back, head down, gripping her handbag as if it were a lifeline. When my solicitor presented the evidence, visa applications, school enrollments, flight itineraries, money transfers, and especially the recording, where he said, "I'll handle Evelyn," I watched Thomas's face cycle from shock to fury to something close to collapse. His lawyer insisted it was all exploratory planning, a hypothetical opportunity, miscommunication. But the judge, a middle-aged woman with the expression of someone who'd seen every version of human selfishness, shook her head. "This was not hypothetical," she said. "This was deliberate preparation, and it posed a real risk of international parental abduction." Her ruling was swift and devastating for Thomas. I received primary custody. Thomas's visits were to be supervised only. He was barred from taking the children out of the country. All passports were placed in my possession, and with the court, when the judge said the words "risk of abduction," something inside me unclenched, something that had been coiled tight since the night I opened his laptop. Thomas sat frozen, face drained of color. Mara fled the room in tears, but the legal victory didn't erase the emotional aftermath. A few days later, Thomas sent a long message apology, excuses, begging, blaming stress. Begging again, asking me to reconsider our future. I read it once, then deleted it. Some apologies are attempts to soothe one's own conscience, not the wounds of the person they hurt. The following weeks were a strange mix of peace and numbness. I slept in my childhood bedroom. I listened to Lily breathe softly in her cot, heard Noah's sleepy whispers through the baby monitor. Ordinary sounds I'd taken for granted before. Now they felt like signs of safety, proof that I had protected what mattered most. Our final conversation happened at a supervised visit in a small-town library. Thomas looked older, defeated, eyes dull from weeks of fallout. While the kids built block towers, he stepped closer and whispered, "I'm sorry. I don't know what I became." I looked at him for a long moment, not with hate, not with heartbreak, but with absolute clarity. "Thomas," I said, "you didn't become someone else. You made choices, and now we're all living with them." He looked away, and that was the last private moment we ever shared. Now, weeks after the ruling, the children and I are rebuilding a life quieter, steadier, ours. Noah laughs again without flinching. Lily has started toddling between furniture. I work part-time nearby. My parents help in ways I once felt guilty for needing. And one evening, as I journaled at the dining table, a realization washed over me. I was no longer afraid of Thomas. Not of his plans. Not of what he might try. Not of losing my children. Because I had already walked through the darkest version of that fear and I was still here. My life isn't what it used to be. But maybe it doesn't need to be. If there is one thing I learned from all this, it is this: sometimes, to protect what matters most, you must become the strongest version of yourself even when you never asked to. And for the first time in a long time, the future feels like mine again. Not because Thomas was stopped, but because I chose myself. That night, I opened my husband's laptop just to check the daycare email and found out he'd been secretly applying for New Zealand residency visas for 3 people. My name wasn't one of them. I froze in the middle of our small kitchen, glowing under the warm lights, my hand still resting on Thomas's keyboard. I normally never touched his laptop, but that evening Noah had a slight fever. The nursery had emailed needing updated health information, and my own laptop had died. I grabbed his without a second thought. A tiny, harmless moment. A completely ordinary gesture. And then my entire world slid out of place within 3 seconds. His browser was open. On the first tab was Immigration New Zealand, long-term skill visa. Not a travel blog. Not an article about vacations. It was the actual visa application form. What made my heart slam against my ribs wasn't the type of document. It was a small printed line in the PDF application for Thomas Carter, Noah Carter, Lily Carter. There was no Evelyn Carter. No me. I blinked several times, convinced I'd misread it. But no, those were my children's names. My husband's name. In the absence of mine, my pulse hammered harder. My chest tightening until breathing felt like swallowing air through wire mesh. We had never, not once in 8 years of marriage, talked about New Zealand. Thomas had a dream job in Manchester. My family lived a few towns away. Everything in our lives was stable. Perfectly normal. Until that moment, I scrolled. Child passports. Preschool application forms in Auckland. An email titled, "We'll finalize details once the tickets are confirmed." I opened it, and my world detonated. The email thread between Thomas and Mara H stretched over months. Not explicitly romantic, but dripping with implication. Fresh start, being together properly. The waiting is killing me. I kept hoping for a rational explanation, some kind of professional exchange. A project, a misunderstanding. But the last paragraph gutted me. "I've checked the neighborhood near the school. The kids will have plenty of space. I can't wait, the kids. My kids with another woman. Without me." I collapsed back against the fridge. A cold feeling crawling up my spine like winter wind forced inside the house. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my sister. The phone flash sent, and my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped the laptop onto the tile floor. The sharp metallic thud echoed through the kitchen. Lily stirred upstairs, but thankfully didn't wake. I sank onto the floor, staring into the impossible reality in front of me. Thomas, my teenage sweetheart, the man who held my hand through childbirth, who swore he'd never hurt me, had been building a secret future without me. A future where I didn't exist. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to ask why. But something deeper, a primal, maternal instinct whispered, "Don't let him know. Not yet." So, instead of confronting him, I logged into his iCloud on my phone using an old password he thought I'd forgotten. I synced his messages to the iPad in the living room within seconds. The screen glowed with all the conversations he believed were hidden. I didn't remember how many hours I stayed awake that night. Just that every message between him and Mara felt like a knife pressed slowly into my ribs. No delays. She won't stop us once we're already there. We're almost ready, me. When Thomas came home around 11 p.m., smelling faintly of beer and exhaustion, he kissed my forehead like everything was fine. Still awake? You look tired, Evie? I smiled. A smile cold enough to frost glass. That was when I made my decision. If Thomas wanted a war, I would win it. And he would never ever take my children anywhere without going through me first. P2 Rising Conflict Plus Revealing Truth English full version of P1 was the explosion. P2 was the slow, suffocating realization that the man sleeping next to me was not simply cheating. He was planning a future in which I was an obstacle to be removed. And the terrifying part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how normal he acted afterward, as if nothing was happening. As if I imagined it. The days that followed were the worst part. Thomas suddenly became the perfect husband, attentive, sweet, overly helpful. He made tea for me in the mornings, walked Noah to nursery, washed dishes after dinner, a chore he normally avoided like the plague. I couldn't tell if he felt guilty, or if he was trying to keep me complacent, while he quietly tied up loose ends. But every gesture, every smile, felt like a blade wrapped in silk. Meanwhile, the iPad was a constant flood of messages between him and Mara, nothing explicit, but terrifyingly coordinated. We're a few weeks away, she won't expect a thing, the transition will be smooth. Documents nearly done, and then the one that made my breath freeze. She doesn't check my things. I began watching Thomas like someone studying a dangerous animal. The way he locked his phone, the way he stepped into the garage to make calls, the rapid closing of his laptop whenever he heard footsteps. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I knew that the moment he realized I knew the truth, he changed tactics. I had to let him believe I was still blind. One afternoon, Noah watched cartoons while Lily napped upstairs. Thomas was in his office. I passed by the door and heard him speaking quietly into the phone. Visa. Departure. Timeline. I froze. Then, I'll handle Evelyn. She only panics when she knows too much. A chill slid down my spine. I slipped my phone out of my pocket and began recording. That night, after Thomas fell asleep, I combed through our bank statements again. His secret account had almost £15,000 in transfers, small amounts spread out over 3 months. 3 months. Right after I had given birth to Lily, when I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and trusting him more than anyone, I screenshot everything: emails, transactions, recordings, call logs. Then, I made a note in my phone: if something happens, call Mom, call Hannah, call solicitor if necessary. I was preparing for a scenario I never could have imagined: defending my children from their own father. Then came the phone call that confirmed everything. On Friday, the nursery rang me. Evelyn, the manager said carefully, Thomas just phoned. He asked about pickup times and whether the back gate is unlocked in the afternoon. My skin went cold. Thomas never picked up Noah unless I specifically asked him to. And the back gate? It was only used in emergencies. Why did he need to know that? Why today? I asked the nursery to never release Noah to him without calling me first. They agreed. That evening, Thomas came home late. I stood in the kitchen holding Lily, trying to keep my voice even. Nursery called. They said you asked about early pickup. He paused just a fraction of a second, but enough. Oh? That? I was just checking next week's schedule. A lie. A flimsy, rehearsed lie. I realized then, I was living beside a man who still kissed my cheek and called me love, all while planning to dismantle everything I held dear. That night, new messages came through the iPad. Mara, I booked the house viewing. We can be ready by next month. Thomas, perfect. She won't question anything. She won't question anything. I read it once, twice, a third time, and something inside me hardened. I was done being afraid. If Thomas had a plan, then so did I.